welcome everyone. We're at the top of the hour now and we have many attendees logging in. So welcome to all of you and welcome to another NetHope Solutions Center webinar. My name is Madeline No, and I am just going to go over a few of our housekeeping guidelines before we get rolling. We would like to keep this session interactive. Please post your questions in the WebEx chat window, and we will be able to curate your questions during the session, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Also look for a follow-up email with the recording and collateral on the NetHope Solutions Center. And we hope that you will take just a minute or two at the end of the session to fill out our webinar satisfaction poll. We love to get your input, and we hope that your input makes our sessions better over time. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Layla Toplik, to introduce our topic and our speaker for today.
Great. Thanks so much, Madeline. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Layla Toplik, and I lead the Emerging Technologies Working Group at NetHope with the focus on AI and blockchain, and specifically how we use those technologies to help us do our work better. And I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts on why we're doing this specific webinar and what to expect. As many of you are getting started with AI, and we are in the kind of early stages of using AI in the nonprofit sector, one of the pain points that we keep hearing about is data. And there are a number of questions, issues, concerns related to data, ranging from what data is needed and how do you get it ready for AI, to the ethical considerations and the concerns about bias. So in the next hour, we'll tackle some of these questions. And there are three things really to keep in mind as we spend the next 55 minutes or so on this topic. We'll cover as much as possible in this short period of time, but obviously an hour is just not enough time to cover everything about data in detail. So bear that in mind as you fill out the exit survey, because you can let us know what topics you'd like to explore in more detail on the next webinars. The second thing to keep in mind is that we have a very diverse group on this call, and that's something that Ria and I kept in mind as we were preparing the content for this webinar. We have NGOs, tech companies, academia, we have field programs, ICT4D, and data scientists. So this webinar will hopefully give each one of you a few insights and useful tips. And Ria has prepared a number of really interesting case studies and examples, and you'll see them in the presentation, and these slides will be available to you for download after the webinar. And lastly, this is not meant to be an overview of AI concepts, of AI capabilities or tools. If you are interested in that, join us in Geneva next Friday. Madeline will be sharing that link at the NetHope workshop at the AI for Good Global Summit at the UN. We'll also plan to do a webinar with some of that key content, including the case studies that will be shared in that workshop. So for this specific discussion, I invited a data expert who works for one of our partners in AI, Microsoft. And Ria leads program management for AI for Humanitarian Action at Microsoft. And in this role, she focuses on helping the NGOs, the nonprofits, UN agencies get their data ready for AI, and also develop AI solutions focused on 4 areas of AI for Humanitarian Action, including disaster relief, needs of children, protecting refugees and displaced people, and promoting respect for human rights. So Ria, if you can get us started, we'll take questions at the end. Please do post the questions in the chat window, and we'll leave as much time as possible for the Q&A. Over to you, Ria.
Thank you, Layla. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here to speak to such a diverse audience. Thank you all for joining. As Layla mentioned, AI is a very broad topic, and I hope to touch upon a few key nuggets that I hope are useful to all of you. And as I talk through various topics, If you have follow-up or deep dives that you'd like to request, feel free to type your questions in the chat window, and we'll review them in addition to your comments in your exit surveys. Thank you all, and let's get started. As I mentioned, there are many types of AI systems, and at Microsoft, we believe, and our vision is, that AI amplifies human ingenuity. And what that means is partner capabilities are very important to us. We're really in AI to enable all of you. And AI is not just about humans being replaced by machines. It's about how AI can help you accomplish more with less effort, how AI can help you do more than you could do alone. It's easy to think of AI in terms of robots and systems that are equivalent to human intelligence. But AI can even be a simple machine learning model. A great example is the auto-suggest APIs and algorithms that have been around for over a decade in applications like Bing and Google, which reduce human effort by learning from historical search patterns to help you search for the right term at the right time. More recently, we've had personal assistants and automation solutions like Google Photos that help reduce human effort. That being said, there's been a lot of scrutiny in the press about the bias that's prevalent in such solutions and products. And at Microsoft, we take this very seriously. And we have a three-pronged approach to solve for bias in assistants and other AI solutions. Number one, we start by building the right data sets and ensuring that our data sets reflect the diversity of the world. This is also why the leader of my team, John Kahan, who has years and years of experience in data, was picked by Microsoft's SLT to lead AI for Good initiatives and infuse data and AI as part of programs like ours in humanitarian action. The second way we tackle bias in such products is by ensuring inclusive and diverse hiring practices. And last and most important, we ensure that we never ship technology before it's ready. We have new principles in place called the FATE principles. I'll touch upon this later, and also as part of our Q&A. And we have a great board that reviews our products, our AI products, for privacy, accessibility, and ethics. The third category of AI products are the true AI-first solutions like self-driving cars that are a few years out and will really help reduce human effort in the future. So what does it mean to be data ready? Any AI system needs data, but just because you have data doesn't mean that you need AI. There are usually 3 to 4 scenarios in which great data informs the building of a great AI solution. The first condition is you probably have a problem that doesn't need intuition. It needs more than common sense. 2, you have good data, and there's usually a right answer that you can answer with data. And lastly, you don't need an explanation of why. To explain the last point a little further, I'd like to show you Gartner's 5 stages of AI products. Most of us are between stages 1 and 2, where we're trying to understand what happened historically and why it happened. In these 2 stages, you may not always need AI. You may need sophisticated statistical models which answer your question. But as you progress along, as your organization progresses along, predictive, prescriptive, and cognitive stages of analytics, of data readiness, that's when you can realize the true power of AI in answering what will happen and how to respond. As you become data ready, or as you think about becoming data ready, it's very important to start with a diverse team. I've mentioned already that one of our approaches to tackling bias is diverse and inclusive hiring. And the same applies for your AI teams as well. Collaboration is essential to AI. Even though I'm an AI practitioner, I've spent rotational assignments in finance, marketing, and engineering to build diversity of perspective. And your AI team should have representation across key parts of your organization to bring together data silos across all these functional disciplines, ensuring solid governance and strict privacy and data usage policies to protect your data, your partner data, and your customers' data. Equally important are the process and the technologies that you use to deliver AI. One size doesn't fit all. And in the next few slides, I'd like to show you a 4-step process that can help you get data ready. Keep those questions coming. Step 1, always start with your audience and try to understand them across 5 main dimensions. What is their circumstance, their desired progress, their definition of quality, and what are the barriers and workarounds that they have in place to achieve their outcomes? There is a famous framework, the Jobs to be Done framework, that talks about the importance of understanding your customer from the jobs that they do versus the products and solutions you can build for them. What you see here is a case study from our refugees and displaced people pillar. In this case, the customer is refugees in places like Venezuela, in Syria, asylum seekers in the US. The functional need here is, hey, let's find the best volunteers for people who have been displaced by disaster. The social and emotional requirements here are, let's also give volunteers a chance to connect with their peers and give veterans a key segment within our volunteer population, a sense of mission and purpose. Thinking about your customers, and you may have more than one customer group, helps you define and prioritize and deeply understand and build empathy, because true transformation and sustainability of business outcomes, or any outcome, really depends on the empathy and understanding you have for your customers. Once you deeply understand customer needs, it's important to start prioritizing. The reality is, especially in our sector, we operate with limited resources. So we need to be smart about where we invest our time and resources, which programs are most important. If you're unaware or unable to decide the initiative that is most important, start with your intuition. Intuition can often lead the way in defining your priorities and understanding the data to collect. Then you can use AI to prove or disprove your hypotheses. What I show here is an animation to support that statement. The data you collect can prove or disprove any hypotheses. So it's important to start with your true north, start with why. Here's another case study from the Humanitarian Action vertical. The partner communicated a problem statement which was very solutions driven, the need to parse through hundreds of documents with volunteer skills and finding the most optimal team assignment process. After several discussions with the partner, we were able to understand the true why, the importance of organizing effective teams, the complexity of scaling such teams in real time, and the complexity of skills and seniority distribution across all these volunteers. So my ask to this audience, all our partners, would be, help us understand the why, help us understand your customers' top needs, and we can work with you in defining the problem statements. Sometimes by understanding the why, we can come up with better solutions that can meet your needs faster. And now I would love to show you the solutions that we deployed. We had complexity in terms of the volunteers, their operations, the quality of the images we received. And what you see here is an example of a volunteer certificate that we had to parse using optical character recognition and AI technology. The complexities here were, one, we had to understand if the volunteer was Michael J. Sharon or Rahul Daudia. We had to understand what the code IS00-100 meant. What are the skills it mapped to? Who are the volunteers on the back end that had that skill? And what does the date April 2019 mean? What helps when we parse through such certificates, and how as partners you can help us, as domain experts in this area can help us, is building a data dictionary that helps us understand from the get-go the variabilities in your data set and educating us on where to look for the things that matter most to you. The second solution we implemented here was not AI-based. There was a need for an optimal algorithm, and there was a need and urgency to ship the solution in a few weeks. So in this scenario, we built rules into the existing dynamic CRM solution for the customer to meet their most urgent needs of deploying a solution in a timely manner. So AI is not always the solution. There can be simple rule-based solutions that can meet your needs immediately. The best part is rule-based solutions generate training data that can help you build a better AI solution down the road. Step 3, preparing your data. This is when it's very important to become detail-oriented. Deeply understand your data in terms of where it resides, how was it created, how good is it, who owns the data, is there a process in place to collect the data in an ongoing manner that ensures high quality. Great AI lies at the intersection of your audience understanding, your defined and prioritized business problems, and high quality data. Remember, in order to reduce bias and noise in your data set, you might need to collect more data by reaching out to partners or public data sets. Once you've identified the data you need for your AI solution that tie to the business outcomes or the programs and initiatives you want to launch, it's important to prepare your data and build a deep understanding within your organization. Our partners, some of our partners, use a data dictionary to align various teams within their organization on the data sets, on a unified data set. Always remember the 5 C's of high quality data. Is the data correct? Does it accurately reflect the circumstances in which it was created? Does it conform to privacy and security policies? Is it current and up to date? Is it consistent from time to time? And is it consolidated at the right level of granularity? For example, if you need monthly data, is your data truly stored at a monthly grain? Or do you need deeper levels of granularity at the weekly or the daily level? In order to ensure the 5 C's of data quality, you might often have to consolidate, clean, transform, and sometimes even reduce the data. No surprise that most data scientists and data analysts spend a staggering 70% of their time on data preparation. And this is often the most challenging and most crucial part of AI. Someone once told me that data quality is not sexy. It's not. It's an essential part of ensuring a high-quality AI system down the road. Here is another case study. We had an AI for Humanitarian Action partner who needed to build a recommendation algorithm to match their sponsors with beneficiaries. And here are the 7 steps we followed together. The first step, as I mentioned, was identifying a diverse team that came together across marketing, legal, privacy, data science, and business development. This was true both at Microsoft and within our nonprofit partner. Our partner created a data dictionary for their internal data, had a thorough privacy and legal review, and then identified and joined to partner datasets. We then came together as a team, a cross-company team, to identify the problem statements and prioritize the most important problem to tackle. There were also some data issues that we analyzed along the way. To share more details on some of the data issues that I've noticed across partners, I'd like to give you an example of the graphs I usually use. Visualization is a complex problem. It's a discipline on its own, but thankfully, there are 4 main types of visualizations that can help us uncover issues, anomalies in our data sets. Even better, most of the time we'll need to use comparison and composition-based insights. As another example, here is a data set with a really long tail that came from one of our partners with an AI for Humanitarian Action. By looking at the distribution across categories, it became evident that we could only train our AI model on the top 6 categories where we had enough data to train the model to have the right levels of accuracy that we needed. Categories with fewer labels within category are not usable when training an AI system. Something to keep in mind as you think about preparing sample data for the purposes of creating an AI prototype. Balanced data ensures higher levels of accuracy, reduces bias, and overfitting in your dataset. Once you've understood your customer, prioritized your business problems, and identified the right data set, now it's time to design your AI solution. And very often, building AI is more art than science. It's an iterative process. We may build a prototype on a subset of your data, review accuracy metrics with you, and then work with your IT team to deploy the model. As data changes over time, we may need to revisit and retrain the AI model with new data and work with you collaboratively to understand if the new model parameters and metrics work for you in your new environment. Always remember, details are important. Get deep in your data. Think about the insights and problems that are most useful to your customers, and design a solution that is simple and consistent. You may not always need AI. But if you choose to use AI, there are 4 main types of models. And complexity here is determined by, is the model supervised or unsupervised? Supervised learning means that you have a way to label your data set. How many samples do you have? How much data do you have that is ready for training an AI algorithm? And last but not least, are you predicting categories or values? As an example, if you were classifying cheese types, This is a classic classification problem. If this was supervised learning, you would have humans label each cheese as cheddar, mozzarella, parmesan, and you would feed those outcomes to a machine learning algorithm that would increasingly classify cheese at a higher confidence. If you were analyzing weather patterns to uncover trends, once again, this is a supervised learning problem provided you have data, historical data on weather patterns in a city with days classified as sunny, cloudy, rainy, or windy. If you did not have the labels, sunny, cloudy, rainy, or windy, the option would be to use clustering or unsupervised approaches to identify what your classes could be. If you were trying to forecast weather, you would be predicting values, and regression is a great model to use in this scenario. Very often, we're looking to identify fraud or spam in our data sets, find anomalies, root causes for discrepancies. The last category of algorithms, anomaly detection, kernel reduction, dimensionality reduction, are great for this scenario. They're unsupervised and can learn on large data sets with a lot of dimensionality to simplify. Such models can also be used to reduce the complexity in your data set to get it ready for supervised learning models like decision trees or SVMs, support vector machines. As a quick recap, 4 steps to get your data ready for AI: understanding your audience, defining your problem, preparing your data, and then designing an AI solution if it's the right thing to do. But AI is not without its problems. And there are a few lessons that, as a team, my team has learned along the way. The first lesson we've learned is that bias is prevalent. We're all familiar with the biases due to gender, race, and location, and age. But bias can be seen in many more scenarios. For example, there was a study published in 1991 that stated left-handed people were at risk of dying 9 years younger, the equivalent of smoking 120 cigarettes a day. And this was a case study in bias. For years, left-handed people were trained to become right-handed, but over time, this behavior changed, which resulted in an artificial increase in the left-handed population. This bias in the data was responsible for the predictions and the inaccurate outcomes because the study assumed that left-handed people, or the percentage of left-handed people over time, was steady. We've learned that human behavior can be a bad influence. I mentioned auto-suggest solutions early on, and we've learned that learning from historical search patterns, historical behavior, is not always the right thing to do. So we're increasingly cognizant of scenarios in which our historical AI solutions need to be tweaked or even suppressed to ensure that we build experiences that are respectful and respect the diversity of the world. Correlation does not imply causation. There are many studies about the links between a happy marriage and a cheap wedding, very similar to the links between ice cream sales and drowning. It's very important to know that correlation does not imply causation. It can give us great tips in predicting outcomes, but not causality. It's always important to remember that there will always be people who will try to game the system. Recently, we had an Alzheimer's research study, an online game where thousands came together to label live videos of stalled blood in mouse images, in mouse brains. Even at such a noble event, we saw instances of people trying to game the system to win the game. Very similar to how entrepreneurs in ancient India began to raise cobras for reward by the British government. So how do we tackle these problems in bias? As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft was one of the first companies that came out with FATE principles, and we increasingly use this as a framework as we build AI solutions. We take concrete steps as we build data sets to prevent bias. Some techniques that you can use are ensure that your test cases and your testers model the diversity of the world. Make sure that your team represents and looks like the consumers for whom you're building the AI solutions. Be cognizant of unconscious bias. Have a diverse workforce and ensure that you stratify your data sets across regions, across categories, across service levels. And most importantly, ensure that people represent the diversity of your data set. Even with these challenges, the power of data is real. Data is the currency of your company. AI is not new, but with the advent of Internet of Things and digital devices, and with cloud technologies that allow us to harness the power of data, AI and machine learning is becoming increasingly accessible. You have new opportunities to enable outcomes that were previously impossible. I'm thrilled to be on this journey together with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ria. You covered certainly a lot of ground in a short period of time, and as noted, this was just given the diversity of the audience, we wanted to, with this first webinar around data for AI, provide a baseline. So you heard about 4 steps of getting your data ready for AI, and data cleanup or data preparedness alone can be a whole webinar. So if you have any specific questions about those 4 steps and related case studies that Ria shared, let us know. Ria also talked about 4 types of machine learning models, and then provided some insights around ethical considerations and bias, and some really fascinating examples. So let us know what questions you have for Ria specifically, and also do let us know in the chat window what are some of the topics you would like to hear about on the next webinar. Just again, noting that we've got field programs, we've got data scientists on the call, we've got NGOs as well as tech companies and academia, so quite a diverse group, but let us know how we can continue to explore this topic. I'll take the, let me just read the first question, and in the meantime, do let us know what additional questions you might have. So the first question is actually related to the last part of the presentation around addressing negative, specifically how can we address negative historical facts and statistics in an unequal system to ensure the use of AI does not perpetuate bias and inequality. Ria, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and as I briefly touched upon it, I recommend a 3-step approach. Right, there is so much scrutiny about, and it's validated, justified scrutiny about bias, especially as it relates to gender. But bias is also prevalent with race and age, and even with left-handed people, as you noted in the case study. And our approach is 3-pronged. The first step is just getting that data ready. It's important to spend the time that it takes. 70% of the time in building any AI solution should be spent in getting your data right. in ensuring that your data is stratified across all the segments that model your audience, be it diversity of geographical regions, be it diversity of your gender. Very often we see data sets that even admissions to top universities in the US, we've seen that they skew more towards male applicants. It's important in such scenarios to ensure that you collect larger amounts of data and suppress categories that are overrepresented, ensuring, think back to that visual I showed you with the long tail of distribution. Always ensure that your subcategories are equally represented. 50% male, 50% female. If you see a data set that is 90% male and 10% female, either add more values to your female categories or remove some values from your data set that represent the parts of the male population. That's just an example. You can extend that to geographical regions and other segments that you see in your data set. Secondly, allow for inclusive and diverse hiring. And this is not just about hiring women. It's important to think about hiring your team, building your team in a way that reflects the consumers of your audience. Is it students? Is it retirees? Is it middle-aged people? It's important to represent diversity across the dimensions that are most important to your audience. We hire, we increasingly hire accessible audiences at Microsoft because we want to build experiences, AI experiences that are respectful of the 1 billion people that live with disabilities. And then the third piece is have a strict review of ethics, privacy, and security as you build and ship your AI solutions. We have the Ether board here at Microsoft. We have the FATE principles, which are a guideline. And most importantly, do not discount the value that your employees who are trained in the humanities and social sciences can bring. They have a unique way of looking at data sets and AI solutions that can help build for better solutions that are unbiased and respectful. Did that answer the question?
Great. Thank you so much, Ria. Just one couple of thoughts just to add on this, and we'll get to the next question. One is around really recognizing that bias happens in all stages, from how you frame the problem, and you heard Ria talk a bit about that. So when deciding what you want to achieve, to how you collect the data. So data might be, that you collect might be not representative of reality or reflects existing prejudices as related to the question asked. And then also how you prepare the data. So this involves selecting which attributes you want the algorithm to consider. The one emphasis that Ria made, which I think is important for us to be constantly thinking about, is there is that question about who you hire, who's part of your core team, but also how you might co-create with the communities with whom we work. So, for example, with refugee populations, where they're not just the recipients of the solutions we're creating, but actually co-creators and ultimately the ones to make sure that that solution is both relevant and sustainable in those communities. So we'll go to the next question and continue adding questions to the chat window. So the next question is around some of the good practices for marrying the needs of development organizations, communities, tech companies, providing solutions, and other stakeholders in ensuring the community or beneficiary data is safe and protected while being used for the benefit of those communities. So Ria, if you can share any observations and insights that you and your team have had from the work that you've done on AI for humanitarian action programs.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. And we have a solution in place, and this is our thinking, and hopefully it's something that partners can adopt as well. When we think about the safety of data, it really comes down to two things: privacy and security. And one size doesn't fit all. And there are usually three types of scenarios we've seen in working with all our partners in AI for Humanitarian Action. One is where the data is truly open source. In such cases, we build a partner data sharing agreement that reinforces the safety of the data. We also run checks in this scenario to ensure that there is no personally identifiable information, and that there is no information that can be used to potentially game the system down the road, that the scenario is truly as safe and open as we believe it to be. So scenario one is really a validation exercise. It's also the simplest data sharing solution where the risks are minimal in terms of privacy and security. The second case is where there is PII information, where the data sets can be joined with other data sets that are similar in nature. Most of our AI for Humanitarian Action projects reside in this category. In this case, we have confidential privacy solutions where we build a data set that is hosted in one hardware solution or one containerized application, that it can be protected with the right levels of privacy and security with data that share a similar signature. The third category is data like healthcare data that requires a whole new level of security and anonymization. We have a new platform that Microsoft Research has put out there called the Differential Privacy Framework that introduces noise within the data sets, so it can never be used for any purpose other than which it is intended, that only specific aspects of the data can be used while at an aggregate level for inferences and AI solutions rather than the entire data set itself. Other solutions that we put in place are where the data resides. Sometimes the data, in cases where privacy and security are of utmost importance, we ensure that the tenants are created in a way that the data resides with the partner rather than within Microsoft. That's just scratching the surface, and if there's interest, we can spend an entire session talking through privacy and security and the architectural aspects of implementing them.
Yeah, thanks, Ria. And this is also something that Cameron brought up on the last webinar that we had back in April with a NetHope membership only, and just the importance for those of you who are considering working with Microsoft on the AI for Humanitarian Action related projects, how critical it is for the company based on just learning from the recent projects for our organizations to be asking those questions and to have a plan in place. So if there is interest in those topics, let us know in the chat window. So I'll move on to the next comment/question, and please do keep the questions coming. Great discussion, so that's great to hear. Microsoft had a story mapping tool that combined outcome stories, data viz, and big data analysis. Can't remember the name at the moment. It was taken offline last year. So Ria, do you know if there is a concrete hosted application at Microsoft like this one that was just described that is available to the NGO community to pilot AI and big data for relevant organizational functions like M&E?
Yes. The best solution that we've used or we are using increasingly is Power BI. And even within Microsoft, our team is hosting training sessions in ways that data and insights can come together in a hosted cloud service environment to land the insights and outcomes that our internal partners need. We've also used Power BI to share insights on key initiatives like affordable housing with the U.S. representatives. I recommend Power BI for this audience as well. I believe the storytelling tool was Sway, which can be used in combination with the Power Platform to tell interactive stories, interactive and compelling stories to your audience.
Thanks, Ria.
Yep. Sorry, Leila. If there's interest, Power BI training is something we can set up for this audience as well.
Great. Oh, that's a very good point. So again, let us know either in the survey or in the chat window. I'll move on to the next question. This is from Kate at NetSuite. Thank you, Kate, for attending. Right now, Kate says we, or the members of the Impact Cloud community, are discussing a set of responsible principles we can adopt to ensure we protect the data of beneficiaries during tech development projects. So, Ria, do you have any specific advice or recommendations on principles that should guide their thinking?
Absolutely. So there is the aspect of protecting the data. Then there's also the aspect of ensuring that as you build your principles, that you think about fairness and accountability. So for this instance, Kate, I would guide you to the FATE principles that are an industry standard within the AI industry. And FATE stands for Fairness, Accountability, Transparency, and Ethics. And within ethics, it's important you think about three areas within ethics. Is your data inclusive? Is it truly stratified and represents the diversity of the sample and the population you wish to represent? Is it accessible? Is it reliable and safe? Does it comply with privacy and security policies? For example, if you're using personally identifiable information like facial recognition, how you capture the data is important. Under no circumstances does Microsoft approve the use of unlawful surveillance. That's just an example to stress the importance of ensuring that your data that you collect is collected in a privacy compliant manner, in a respectful manner, and then stored in a respectful and privacy compliant manner. So to summarize, I recommend using the FATE principles to guide your thinking in this scenario.
That's great. Thanks, Ria, and also for both the humanitarian community and our partners. One of the deliverables that the AI working group, that's part of the Emerging Technologies Working Group, has been working on, and I see Steve is actively involved in this discussion too. Steve Helen from CRS is leading the AI working group. Is that we've been putting together a framework, essentially a set of questions that our sector, together with our partners, whether it's in academia or tech companies, needs to ask at different stages of exploring AI for our work. So from defining the opportunity, even asking the question around, is AI the right solution for this problem, but also questions very specific to data and questions very specific to also ethical considerations. And that's been something that USAID and MIT have contributed to, as MIT is putting together a set of guidelines and checklists based on the insights from all over the sector about what are some of the key questions that we need to be asking that are related to not just only what data do we need for this specific problem statement, but what are some of the potential biases that AI may introduce or amplify in your context? And even things like, do you have resources to continuously clean up that data and to ensure that the data is representative of the problem set and the target audience? So that's the framework we'll be sharing again at the workshop in Geneva next week, and getting the input from the NGO and UN community, and then bringing back to this NetHope community via a webinar in June, July timeframe. So watch for that too. Related to the, just quick comment here before we get to the next question, and Steve, thank you for sharing this. Steve is sharing that that he likes the suggestion on session focus on Power BI and AI, and then there's some work that CRS has already done and has had success with Power BI data stories. So take a look at that link if you are tracking the chat window. So the next question is related to the resources. Some organizations, and Ria, as you know, NetHope membership and NetHope community includes both large organizations that have data resources or data expertise and some that don't. So some organizations don't have data science expertise. So how can companies like Microsoft support those organizations in getting their data ready for AI? If you can speak to specific examples from the recent work.
Yes, absolutely. I cannot share names of partners, but I can share the framework that we've used. So the way we prioritize projects within AI for Humanitarian Action is a two-step process. First, most of you are familiar with Cameron. Cameron evaluates projects and proposals from impact to the sector itself. And then the second layer of our review process is the readiness of the data. So once we have a project that is reviewed and accepted into the AI for Humanitarian Action program, I start engaging with the partner as a weekly Scrum or a bi-weekly Scrum meeting. And that's when we step through the four-step process that I shared earlier, working to deeply understand the problem space, prioritizing the scenarios and the programs, and then understanding the data that is needed. So far, we tackle this on a case-by-case basis, though we would like to increase the speed at which we operate. So a good suggestion for this audience, and Leila, maybe to you, would be, can we have workshops in which partners who are interested in participating, we can have an extended 1 to 3 day workshop where we deep dive and understand and spend dedicated time with the group to understand the data readiness and help organizations get ready for data even before proposals are submitted. What do you think, Leila, about that suggestion?
And I think that's a really good suggestion. Would love to hear from the group. So if you like that suggestion, do let us know in the chat window. If there are no more questions, it doesn't look like it. Do take a minute to let us know what are some of the topics. So we touched on a number of topics, and again, the purpose of this webinar was to provide a baseline for a very diverse audience. We touched on a number of topics, and I think there are a couple of ideas in terms of what the next set of webinars might be. Let us know what you and your organizations need, but also, since we have a number of experts on this call, let us know what you and your organizations can contribute in terms of the training and the resources based on the questions that you've heard. And we're going to give you a few minutes to complete the survey and to think about what would you like to hear about next, or what would you like to contribute to the future webinars, both in terms of the case studies or expertise that you have in a particular area. And right now, I'm going to thank Ria for really preparing this excellent presentation, incorporating a number of examples, and really in a short amount of time covering a number of important concepts, which hopefully all of you got a few key insights or a few interesting examples to incorporate in your work. Thank you very much, Ria. And thank you all for joining us for this discussion. Over to you, Madeline, for the survey.
Thank you, Leila, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you to all the attendees for attending today. Again, we do have our satisfaction poll that we would love for you to fill out. Take just a minute. Once you close the WebEx session, a new window will open up with that survey. Also, you'll receive a follow-up email later today with information and links to the webinar landing page and the presentation materials. And with that, we'll close this session and wish you a great rest of your day. Thanks very much.